public sector investment as well. Yeah.
If we have such a strong labor market right now, why can't we with that to have a minimum wage that is the second worst in the country?
Well, I would say, just on the specific part of that, Minister Morgan likely is better positioned to comment on that. But, what I would say, though, the best thing for the economy is the fact that we have an economy that's creating jobs, that is in a position to continue to create jobs going forward and having people employed. And, that's been my focus from Trade and Export Development and Immigration and Career Training, is creating the conditions for that investment to occur and people to have the skills to take advantage of those jobs when they appear, and that's what we're going to continue to do, and I'm very bullish on what that future looks like for the labor market. Yeah. My understanding, it's not a complete surprise that the K1 and K2 shafts were scheduled to be taken out of commission at some point in the next, foreseeable future, and that was the purpose of the construction of the K3 shaft. What my understanding is, and I haven't spoken directly with officials at Mosaic, but is that there was an increased challenge as far as the brine leakage into that K1 and K2 shaft. So, they're shifting production essentially from Esterhazy to the Collins A mine and then bringing K3 into production in the next number of months with an ultimate, by the end of the year, producing more potash than they had even prior to today. So, these are kind of challenges that exist in the potash sector. So it's, not a complete surprise. And, the fact that there won't be any impacts to their labor force, I think, speaks to the fact there's going to be an orderly transition in production.
And I noticed the focus of the, I think, 15 to 25 age bracket.
Mm-hmm.
Still about 11, not much movement since last month there. Do you think that's something you see changing as, the restaurant back where everyone is in? And restrictions fully, lift?
Yeah. Very good question. And I would suspect that you are in the real world going to see more in that 15 to 30 year age category back at work. We've heard stories, that are anecdotal, I guess, in the big picture, but are real in the smaller picture of, literally dozens of employees going back to work with existing, particularly restaurants. And that'll continue to be the case in the hospitality sector and restaurant sector as we move forward with restrictions being lifted, and particularly as we get back to normal, which we're very much hoping to do in the next 4 to 5 weeks. I think that will mean more employment in that hospitality field, which has been disproportionately impacted because of COVID over the last 18 months or so. I foresee a pretty strong recovery there, and that will be based to a degree as well on the increasing degree of comfort I think the public is going to have in participating both at restaurants but also in the hospitality and tourism space, which are making and looking at making significant investments this year.
Reassurance there that some jobs might be created, but they are sort of jumping this again. They are coming back to the, second lowest wage increase. I mean, how do you defend that? Somebody, might not work for months now, can't work in a restaurant. Now they're coming back, having to catch up, but still only making.
Well, like I said, I think that it is a positive, though, that those, whether it be university student or other young people, have that opportunity to go back to work, and that's just not the case. I mean, I talked to one of my colleagues in Toronto just yesterday, and I mean the stark contrast between where Toronto was at today with complete lockdown. Restaurants open only for takeout service, no clear firm date on which that is going to be changing, versus the fact that we have, in this province, never shut down indoor dining outside of Regina and the limited area surrounding Regina over the last, since the very first initial round of measures. The fact that those young people have the opportunity to go to work is preferable to the circumstance they would find themselves in elsewhere. Well, I wouldn't put anything, Well, I would just say this. At this point, the opposition's view is really not a relevant one. To the vast majority of the business community and the public. I mean, the reality is that the opposition really have zero credibility on the economy. That's the reality. And, as far as their criticisms, they've offered nothing in the way of alternatives. So, my focus has been working with our business community, working with the job creators, working with those who are creating wealth to find that path forward and create the conditions for those investments and jobs to be created, and that's what we're doing.
And now that the job numbers are good, what's next in your job bounce back and volunteers?
Well, I mean, a big part of this is private sector investment, and we're going to continue to work with companies who are making decisions about private sector investment. We've been working closely with them for, that's our job. I mean, that's what we really do through our ECDEV branch of trade and export development. So it's nothing new, but that's going to continue to be a real focus on working with companies to attract that investment, which creates jobs and creates opportunities.
And just to go back to the minimum wage, sorry.
Yeah.
But is there any plans to reevaluate what that minimum wage is and maybe have a more competitive rate amongst the other provinces?
Well, like I said, the specifics of how that all works are best put to the minister responsible, Minister Morgan. But, again, what I would say, though, is about creating the conditions for employment to be created, and that really has been the focus.
With the trends being how they are,
Mm-hmm.
and with all of these new big sort of private projects that are sort of coming down the pipeline, do you think we're going to get full deployment over the next year or two?
That's a very, very good question, Arthur. I think that one of the challenges we are looking at going forward from immigration and career training specifically's perspective is how we are going to address what I think are going to be sector-specific challenges in the labor market. And some of those have, alleviated obviously over time, over the pandemic, but I think that we're going to have challenges in particular sectors in probably quicker than would be expected, but I think in the longer term, growing our labor market is going to be growing our labor pool to supply a growing need for labor is going to be a continuing challenge. And that's something I have tasked our senior officials at ICT with taking a very, very hard look at and putting a high degree of focus on. And part of how we have managed those challenges in the past has been through international in-migration. That's going to continue to be a part of that solution, but I think we really do need to have a focus on how we can utilize folks who are probably underrepresented in the labor market, particularly in the First Nation and Indigenous community, and that's something we're going to continue to make a focus. I think we have, but it's something I've really asked that we put a very high premium on going forward to create conditions for long-lasting labor market attachment, not just tangential or transitional, but long-lasting, long-term labor market attachment from Indigenous folks living in the province. And I think that we can do that, and it's a bit of a different paradigm than I think what governments have looked at before, but I'll probably be having more to say on that as we go forward. Well, it'll depend to a degree on how quickly we see the bounce back in hospitality and tourism. Those had been the sectors where we continued to have labor market challenges right up into the pandemic. So that could be a area where we have challenge. There may be some others that are emerging, but that's why we work really closely with industry about what their future needs are going to be and try and really tailor our training programs through SaskPoly and our regional college system to make sure that we're training folks for the jobs that are going to exist next year, not jobs that existed 10 years ago. And again, that's something we've really tried to make a priority as far as being responsive on the labor market front, looking ahead where the ball is going, not where it is right now. And those discussions are always continuing with companies and aligning that with our training institutions.
Shifting away from jobs for a second, you just pointed to how the hospitality industry has struggled throughout this whole pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
With premier events like QCX and Saskatchewan X happening again this summer, how much are you looking forward to those events pumping money into the fund?
Well, those are just very important economic events, but I think they're really important social events as well for people to be able to take the kids. I know in my case, I haven't been able to take my I have young kids. I haven't been able to go to the exhibition or the Meadow Lake Fair, for example, either for 2 years. And, you know, so I think there's both a social and economic component to it. Economic component's important. But, you know, part of the reason why we wanted to provide clarity as far as what the reopening plan was going to look like, and why we were the very first jurisdiction in Canada to move our reopen plan forward, why we were able to, you know, responsible way provide clarity as well on the potentially July 11th having the lifting of all public health restrictions, was because of the need for industry to be able to plan. I mean, you need lead time to plan these very large-scale events, and to provide that certainty to that industry for those who are responsible for planning them was a part of the reason why we wanted to move forward. So, you know, I think providing that clarity is going to mean we are going to have events like the X, and many like it across the province as well. And, you know, I think there's both an economic and social component to that are going to be very, very beneficial for Saskatchewan.
And do you think people will just kind of flood back to social events, or do you expect it as
I don't know. That's a good question, actually. I think what you've seen in other jurisdictions that are further along than us, Israel would probably be the best example, but some U.S. states as well, is that things have got back to normal quicker than probably people thought they would. You know, not amongst all, but I think that there, you know, is a pretty high degree of you know, willingness and desire on the part of a large part of the public to go back to normal. And, you know, there's a bit of a transition period, but, you know, you're looking at, you know, watch the U.S. hockey playoffs, or hockey playoffs in the United States and the American cities, right? They're filling the stadiums, they're filling the arenas. Baseball games are near full in large parts of the United States. Even blue states, which have been, you know, slower to move on restriction changes than other parts of the U.S. You know, and there have not been major impacts because of it, even though they're going to have had lower vaccination rates when they made those changes than we will have when we're making our changes. So, you know, I think that there will be a bit of a transition period, but I would suspect it's going to move probably quicker than some people think it will.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, thank you.